On Facebook Live like this?
No.
There we are. Okay, so we're live, correct?
Yes.
I gotta refresh my page.
Good.
Okay. On Facebook Live like this?
No.
There we are. Okay, so we're live, correct?
Yes.
I gotta refresh my page. So why am I getting so much feedback, Paul?
It's whoever has it open, they have to mute the sound.
Well, I don't have any sound.
Yes.
Like mute my sound on here, you mean?
Yes.
So why am I getting so much feedback, Paul?
It's whoever has it open, they have to mute the sound.
Well, I don't have any sound.
I can hear you guys. I can hear you guys.
Yes.
Why am I getting so much feedback, Paul?
There we go. Now I can't hear you, Lisa.
I can't hear you either. You hear me, Jim?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, there we go. Better?
There we go.
There we go.
You right, Jim?
Now I can't hear you, Lisa.
I can't hear you either. You hear me, Jim? Are we speaking English?
Can you hear me now?
I hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, there we go.
It's like a reception webinar. If anyone has Facebook open right now, just close it out.
I can't hear you either. You hear me, Jim? Are we speaking English?
Yes.
No, I just
I can.
Reception
is it
webinar.
me, Paul, who's causing the feedback?
If anyone do you have Facebook open in another tab on your computer by any chance?
No.
Are we speaking English?
No, is it me, Paul, who's causing the feedback?
Mute your microphone for a moment, Lisa.
Okay.
Another tab on your computer by any chance?
No.
Microphone mute, Lisa. Not you. Jim or Alan, do you have Facebook open on your computer or a tablet or PC?
I do.
No, I've just got Safari open. Safari. Yeah, I came in through Facebook.
Mine is now shut off. So maybe
Perfect.
I was the one causing the problem.
No problem. Lisa, unmute your microphone and we'll continue on.
Okay. And I'm unmuted, so can I turn my Facebook back on now?
As long as the device is muted, yes.
I think the device is muted. We're all right? We're good to go?
You're good to go.
All right. Well, we're live on Facebook. Thank you everybody for joining us. I see we've got some people in the room already. Just want to generate some audience. It's great to do some testing because that gives everybody a moment to let everybody know that we're there. I'm just going to share here on Facebook right now so people know that we're live. So Jim, if you want to share, and Alan as well, and let your audiences know that we're here on Facebook.
Got you covered.
Yeah, I'm ready to roll.
Okay, wow. Welcome to the Coffee with Lisa show. It's a pleasure to have you both here, all the way from Australia and California. Jim Cathcart is an Extra Credits faculty member here at Extra Credits and has been helping people succeed since 1976.
In 75, I was trying, but they weren't succeeding.
And you've authored how many books now, Jim?
18.
18 books. And you're a professional speaker. You travel all over the world speaking to audiences. And you're a TEDx speaker as well, and you've done very well on TEDx. Talk to us a little bit about your speaking experience on TEDx.
Okay. TEDx, for those not familiar with the distinction between TED and TEDx, TED is technology, engineering, or technology, entertainment, and design merged into one forum. And TEDx started as a spinoff of that because there was such great popularity. People wanted to organize independent events, and they've sprung up all over the world. And now there are more than 100,000 separate TEDx videos, separate presentations on their YouTube channel. And Allan and I obviously have one each. And mine has recently hit about 1,165,000 views with almost no promotion from me. I've mentioned it. I've got it posted on my website, but I'm not promoting it actively or doing anything to set it,
Get it out there.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, if you wouldn't mind, well, let's not wait any longer. Let's have a look at your TEDx speech. Paul, if you could turn that on for us, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Somewhere deep inside, you know what kind of person you were designed to be. If you want to produce great acorns, think like an oak, not like an acorn. Think like the person you intend to become. Like the Christian question, what would Jesus do? Ask yourself, how would the person I'd like to be do the things I'm about to do? The acorn has three parts. It's got a stem, a cap, and a seed. And the stem represents its connection to the past. All the acorns, all the oaks that have ever existed in its line before are encoded in that transfer through that stem, the legacy into this acorn. The cap holds onto the seed until the seed's ready to grow on its own. So the cap represents your coaches, your mentors, your role models, your guides, your parents, your friends, your teachers. And when you're ready to grow on your own, the seed of that acorn holds not only your potential, but the potential of every future generation of acorns that will spring from that line. So let me ask a question. What kind of seed is in you? See, I believe part of our responsibility in life is to find out who we are, to discover ourselves. First off, we need to respect our nature. We need to realize we are part of a continuing chain that carries a legacy and a responsibility.
Well, thank you. That was wonderful. And so now I'd like to introduce Allan. And Allan is all the way from Australia in the Kangaroo County down there and is joining us. And Allan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've got an interesting background. I started in the 1950s with my father, who was a life insurance salesman. He used to take me out calling on customers to collect premiums, because when you had a small kid with you, you always got in, and that's how they prospected for new business, because it was normally women they were collecting off, and my dad was the collector agent. And it was hard to get in to prospect the family, prospect the neighbours. So he'd take me with him and they'd let me in. If they wouldn't, he'd say, could Allan have a glass of water, please? Or could he use the toilet? So I spent 3 or 4 nights a week being in toilets all over Australia and drinking water. So I started watching my dad negotiate as a 5-year-old around the insurance table. And he'd say things to me like, if they don't like the premium, they might sit back and put their hand over their mouth or cross their arms. And he'd give me these clues, which he'd got off 75 vinyl records put out by Earl Nightingale back in the 50s.
Wow.
And, that's the old days. Right? They're incredible. So I thought this was normal. I grew up in that environment. And in 1969, I decided to write a book, which I published in 76, which I just called Body Language. And that went worldwide, which drove me into the writing of the business, the communication skills training, and the television. And so it's been a pretty wild ride. And I guess like most people, and Jim would understand this, that every year says, I wonder if it'll work again this year. I've been saying that now for 48 years, and it still seems to keep going.
And you have a very successful TEDx speak, over 3 million views, from my understanding to date.
Well, that's an interesting one too, because I've written 18 books, and they rang me TEDx and said, how about doing this particular one? At the time, I knew about it, but I'd never done one before, and I put together the presentation driving to the venue. And I thought, well, I'll do 3 or 4 minutes just to loosen myself up, because you're under pressure when you're on stage there. The audience isn't under so much pressure because they might have heard 3 or 4 speeches prior to that, and they might be a little bit punch drunk, in fact. And so I thought I'll do 3 or 4 minutes to warm myself up, and I'll do a 10 or 11 TEDx talk. That's the idea. But even though with the final TEDx talk, they left the whole start in as well, which is what we didn't want to do, but they seem to like it. We've had 3.5 million views in that to date. And I used a very simple formula that I learned in public speaking back in the late 60s, early 70s, to have 3 points, and each point has 3 sub-points. So on the way out, I got my wife Barbara driving. I wrote 3 points that I'd say in that TEDx talk and 3 sub-points. And I really looked, to be fair, I never thought much about it when I went out there, yet the things had 3.5 million views. And the thing about it, TEDx, is, as Jim will tell you as well, is that it's an enormous format. It's like a giant brochure that goes worldwide for free, because we put it on our website and we get a lot of business off people who just go to that TEDx site. However, I haven't done another one since. And the reason I haven't, they've asked me to do it, I'm sort of thinking now, I think I prefer to keep myself in the background, just have the one there, not to give too much of my material, because I want to keep speaking all the time and do the key speaking jobs. And I'm just concerned that if I did too many of these, it might take me out of the market on those subjects.
Yep, absolutely. And you always want to keep yourself on the market, right?
Well, that's right. You've got to be current on the market, exactly.
Yeah. Paul, do you want to load Allan's TEDx, please, for the viewers?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good morning. Before we kick off, let's get a bit of light in the room, guys, so I can see the faces. So when I grab some of the participants that we get a little later, we'll see where you are. That's a bit better. Good. Everybody hold your right hand in front like this in handshaking position. Uncross your legs, take a relaxed position, right hand in front. Now, when I say the word now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you to turn to someone beside you, shake hands as if you're meeting for the first time, and keep pumping till I ask you to stop. Then you'll stop and freeze it, and we're going to analyse what's happening. You got that? You don't have time to think about this? Do it now. Pick anybody and pump, pump. Everybody, pump, 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 pump. Freeze it, hold it, stop, hold it, freeze it. Keep your hands locked. Keep them locked. Person whose hand is most on top is saying, I'll be the boss for the rest of the day. Now, when you meet people for the very first time, the first 4 minutes of meeting a new person, you decide pretty much 80% of your attitude about them, don't you? In fact, it's over 80%. You decide in the first 4 minutes of meeting somebody whether you're going to give them a fair go, a fair hearing, or whether you're going to reject them. And the first thing that's likely to happen is this thing called a handshake. And I'm going to try a couple of the front row here. You get 1 to 3 feelings when you lock hands with people. The first feeling is, that feels pretty good. Actually, I think you and I will get on pretty well. I think we could do business together. I think we're going to get on well. That was a good one. Let's try a second one. Okay. Just check my cash, see if it's still all there. Yeah. I felt a bit intimidated then. Let's try the third one. Yes.
There's a lot of audience interaction there, and I'm a very interactive speaker, and I do get people on stage, and I take the mickey, and it's unprepared, but you can anticipate what people are likely to do when you bring them up. And I think because as part of what I do, I involve the audience to make them the star. So time burns up really quickly. And as somebody's always said, it might be you, Jim, you have to be humorous when you speak, so only if you want to get paid.
Right.
Well, and it was interesting because as the video was playing, we were talking about attire and what people expect from you in your dress for success or dress. There's a lot of talk around that. And today, often I'll have a business meeting and a gentleman will come in, blue jeans and a dress shirt. And I often think to myself, why are you wearing blue jeans? It's too casual. But I mean, maybe it's just my perception of what to wear. But I don't know. What do you think, Jim?
Well, the TEDx talk that I did, I was wearing jeans, a sports shirt, or dress shirt, and a sport coat.
Yeah.
And the reason I is they wanted everyone on that in that venue to dress casually. And at the time, most of the TED speakers were coming out in T-shirts and flip-flops and things like that. So it was common to see a TED speaker be ultra casual. And I decided to strike a balance between the two extremes. And Allan said he didn't prepare much for his because he just took what's been prepared for many years and,
That's right.
and carried that into it. I, on the other hand, was working with a coach, and her name was Haley. And Haley said, Jim, don't do your usual thing. And I said, but I want to do my usual thing. She said, yeah, but tell us who you are. The whole idea of TED is ideas worth sharing. That's their concept. So we want to hear ideas worth sharing, and it's not that your regular material is not, but we want to know something about you that we wouldn't get if we went to one of your normal seminars. And so I did a lot of rethinking of my message, and I took the acorn metaphor, which I use a lot, and I've written a book called The Acorn Principle. And so that was a sort of a touch point for me. But the whole thing was about understanding that deep inside you have an essence that's trying to find the perfect way of expressing itself as your life. And if you will learn to study your own patterns while you're studying the rest of the world and look for ways to match who you are with the life that you're living and the career that you're pursuing, the more that match comes into focus, the more rapidly you advance and the happier and more at peace you are down deep. So that was my message that day.
Well, and obviously it's resonated with the world because it's doing very well.
Oh, and by the way, I was one of 18 speakers at that conference, and I don't think there's another speaker at that conference whose video, many of which were excellent, has gone over 100,000 views, let alone 1,100,000.
And so, do you think is there a secret sauce to the getting what is what?
Item 1 is the title, and item 2, if the screenshot they use on YouTube is compelling or sensational, people will click it. My screenshot was not the selling point. It was the title, How to Believe in Yourself, and the length, 8.5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. So you think the time frame as well is important, the amount of time. What do you think, Allan?
Well, with TEDx, they normally give you, I think, 15 minutes is the limit on that. And I thought I'd go shorter than that when I did that one. And if I did another one, I think I probably would go shorter because I could be more succinct and I could go through and in my mind rehearse more the points in the order, because you really can't use cue cards or any sort of knowledge. You've got to do it as it comes. And it's going to be effective because you start to produce cue cards and things, the audience becomes more skeptical of what you're saying. I mean, well, I have seen one of the TEDx speakers I did see the day I did mine, had somebody in the front row, a friend, with a giant cue card, and they just opened it every now and again, and you couldn't see it in the cameras. It was quite effective because the audience didn't know this guy was using a giant idiot card, and that seemed to work pretty well, I thought. But
That's great.
And so, so gentlemen, some of the people would want to know, where do you start with the TEDx? Like, how do you even get on a TEDx stage, first of all?
Allan, how did it happen for you?
Well, for me, they rang me. I didn't seek it out because, as I said earlier, I didn't know a real lot about it at the time. And they rang and said, would you like to do one of these TEDx? I said, I've heard about them. And they said, come to the university on this date and just do 15 minutes. That was about as much as I knew about, which is why I hadn't really put a lot of time and thought into the presentation. I knocked it out in a basic format as I drove down there, and it just happened to work. I thought I'll come up with a single thought that's got at least 3 points with 3 sub-points and just hammer those home. So when people walk away from it or watch the TEDx video, they get 1 point. And it's interesting, I think I've got about 10,000 comments on the bottom of it. And it's interesting really because people who write comments more often than not want to be negative rather than positive. They don't say you did a great job. They say, I didn't like this, or didn't like that, or somebody didn't like my tie. In fact, the TEDx, they didn't want me to wear a tie. It was a university. And I said, well, look, I need to wear a tie because I'm talking about hardcore science. When you're talking about science, you need to wear a tie if you're a guy. So it makes you look like a police officer turns up with no gun, no badge. You're skeptical until they can pull out their ID and prove it to you. And so I didn't give that one a lot of thought, which just probably sounds a bit disappointing in a way, but it was more of a small sample of what I might do on stage. And I no longer do it on stage anymore because it's in TEDx. And that's an important thing to know, that if you are putting into TEDx things that you would normally present, you really legitimately, I guess, can't put those back in there because some people, as Jim said, will expect you to do it, but other people criticize you for doing the same.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's always somebody out there who's criticizing you, but, Grant Cardone, for instance, will say, well, love my haters, at least you know me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the way I got it was I was at a NSA, National Speakers Association conference, and I was sitting at a what do they call it? Meet the Pros table. I was the resident pro, and I was there to advise younger speakers earlier in their career anyway. And so we're going around having a nice discussion, And a woman at my table, Becky Woodbridge, said, I'm the chair of a TEDx event, and I would like you to be one of our speakers. And so we booked it from that. And then she called and said, we want to put you in touch with Haley Foster and have her coach you on this, because the TEDx forum is different from what you're used to. And so I went through, I decided it's free speech coaching, right? So instead of hiring someone, I had a wonderful experience going through their process, and turned out well. And that's one of the things when a client in an industry that I think has depth for me, like years ago with the $1 Million Roundtable in the life insurance industry, which is a worldwide event for life insurance. They said, we want you to speak on the main stage of the $1 Million Roundtable. Well, that's a huge honor, especially in that industry. And for me, coming from that industry, I was just wowed by the opportunity. And I said, absolutely, yeah, I'll do it. And they said, well, we want you to go to Chicago and meet with a team of people and give your presentation as a rehearsal. And I said, what? And they said, no, we'll pay your travel. I said, yeah, but okay. I just decided, I was resisting at first, and I realized, wait a minute, I'm going to have a team of people who are at a very high level of awareness of this thing, who are going to coach me on how to make mine the best it'll ever be. I'm in. And I flew to Chicago, and I spent the time, and I did the rehearsal. And then when I got to Atlanta for the big meeting and I did my keynote, it got a standing ovation, and life was good. God was in his heaven, and beer's delicious.
I got a sitting ovation for mine. Mine was a sitting ovation. Well, one of the things you said,
more respectful.
Yeah, they were British. One of the interesting things that you're saying, Jim, is that occasionally with the client, not only TEDx, but any larger clients, they will say to us as speakers, we want you to come along and do a rehearsal. And it's a bit like microphone checks. They want you to do a sound check. I say, well, if the microphone doesn't work, there's nothing I can do about it. I mean, it either works or it doesn't. I don't need to turn up on one of those. You don't check my jokes and material. I don't want to check the microphone. But with a big client where they're going to film it, and one of the things that we put into our contract, and you probably can't do it with TEDx, but you don't need to. With big clients, you can. If they're going to have a film shot, particularly a 3-camera shoot, they're a very expensive shoot to do that, is you have in any agreement you've got with them, if they do that with permission, that you as the speaker will own the rights to use those in every which way you choose to use in your business. So that way they give you, as Jim said, you've got professionals giving you a completed master. And if you can collect, I must have hundreds of these I've picked up over the years. And what you can do, you can go through and pick out the highlights and put together a master reel or a master tape on something, which can become a product.
Yeah.
What I've done since the beginning of videotaping of speakers, even back when they were just audio taping it and putting it out on cassettes, I had an agreement, or part of my agreement is I'm scheduled to do this for this price at this time in this place and so forth. And if I always have a clause in there that says we encourage recording of this event. If you would like to record it, that's a separate agreement. Please let us know. And they let us know. And sometimes we don't charge for it, but most of the time there is a small fee or an additional fee for that. And part of the agreement is the master belongs to us, and they get a submaster that they can use for the stated purpose that's in the contract. And so they don't have unlimited license to capture your presentation and go take it and market it any way they want to. You still, like the author of a book, have control over the content of that material.
I think that's really important because I know that I speak with speakers that are like you gentlemen, very successful, on the world stage. And then I speak with speakers who are, or coaches or trainers who are starting out in their career. And that's one of the things that they don't really recognize is that that's your intellectual property. And it's very important to keep that intellectual property safe and you have control over it, because the second you let it go, they'll use it for however they want. And the next thing you know, you got a happy, a hot dog face on YouTube video next to your presentation or something crazy with all the video that happens nowadays. But it's really important because if from a coaching perspective, if they're using your thoughts and your thought process of your intellectual property and they're using it to their advantage, then you should be recognized for that.
I've got a quick story. Allan, you may remember who this is about. I'm not going to mention his name, Tony. And so anyway, my colleague was videotaped in a studio, doing a bunch of training videos. And the producer of the videotapes hired a company to duplicate a bunch of them and send them to major clients. And so my colleague made a large sale to, I think it was IBM, some huge company like that. And all the videotapes were shipped to the client. And then my colleague got a phone call. And this was a very tense phone call. The phone call said, "What are you trying to do?" And he said, what do you mean? And they said, at the end of your video, on every one of the tapes, there's the remainder of the porn that was on it before they dubbed it over. Oh my God. They farmed it out to somebody that was repurposing tape.
Oh my God.
How do you recover from that?
Well, it's good performance, you say it's you.
You send it back, all that kind of thing, but it still doesn't make it right. And then everybody's saying, "Oh no, I'm not giving this back. No, I want to show my friends." And so they watch this. Here's Allan Pease or Jim Cathcart. No, wait till the end.
I think Kirk would say that's closing with impact.
Yeah, I would think. There you go. Tell Fripp.
That's right. That's right. Well, you think about filming. It's interesting because I spend 3 to 4 months of my year in Eastern Europe, in Russia and Kazakhstan, and all the places where copyright's irrelevant. And everybody has a video phone, and everybody's got their iPhone, everybody's got their iPad. And I know when I was up in Kazakhstan a few days ago, we had 9,300 people at this meeting, and there must have been about 8,000 iPads and phones up. And I'm sure, if you go through YouTube today, it will be flooded with me speaking Russian in Kazakhstan. And what it means is that, like in places like Australia or America, in the westernized countries, you do have some legal sampling on what people do with it. But more and more, even in these countries, everywhere you go, whatever you talk about, suddenly it's on YouTube that night.
Yeah, I speak in China every year, and the same thing.
Yeah.
Once it's out there, it's duplicated.
Yeah, yeah, which is good. It's great for the brand because it builds a brand, it builds a community around you.
Oh, well, hey, one quick story about that. Dennis Waitley, a colleague of ours who's very famous for the book, The Psychology of Winning, and the audios that go with that, what came before it. Dennis had written a book called The Joy of Work. And one day someone came to him in the United States and said, "Congratulations on your bestseller." He said, "What bestseller?" "The Joy of Work." No, it's not a bestseller. Yes, it is. In China, it's a bestseller. He didn't even publish it in China. Someone else had pirated it, and it became a bestseller. Never got a penny.
Yeah.
When I was up in Russia last, I did a seminar in Moscow, and outside on the pavement, there would have been 20 people with book stands and tapes, and they were selling videos, DVDs, selling all my books, all pirated editions. And I didn't recognise any of them. And not only that, for an extra 50 cents, they signed them.
Oh my God. So how do you gentlemen? So this is an everyday occurrence, and if it's a problem for you guys, it's a problem for our viewers who are watching, who are speakers who are going to watch this video afterwards. How do you stop it, or how do you control that? Like, is there any way to control it to a certain degree, or?
No, you can't. Well, you can't stop it. It'll happen in those countries because they're not bound by our copyright laws. Our copyright laws, if somebody takes something and uses it inappropriately, we can take some sort of action for recall. In places like Indonesia, in China, in Russia, where I go quite a bit, India, those places, they'll just take it. But there's a secret that we discovered years ago with our books. Is when I first went to Russia at the fall of communism, I was there 6 weeks after. And we had to deal with a local guy who we found who was a publisher. So we were going to teach him how to publish, and he put us on television, and we toured around Russia. That was the deal. We split it 50-50. We wouldn't take rubles because nobody wanted. We'd get paid in black beluga, caviar, and vodka. We'd have hire these big trucks, and Barbara and I would drive across Europe through the Channel Tunnel to Sotheby's in England, we'd auction this stuff off. That was the plan. Of course, as you can imagine, being Russia, the trucks never appeared. But the first print run of Body Language was 1 million copies that sold out in 2 weeks. So we printed the second one, sold it in 2 weeks. And we just printed million after million after million. Now, we never saw a cent out of that, ever. But here's the interesting point. Because we anticipated that they would do this, because that's what they do. And the front page of every one of the books we have ever published, 18 books now, same as him. I had 11 number ones in a row. We're number one in Japan again this week. But at the front page of every book has a sales page. Buy Allan, go to the webpage. Do this, come to our weekends, buy these things, go here, go there. So when the pirates knock stuff off, they publish it exactly the way you've done it. So we had the effect of 1 million copies, probably a month or more, in Russian, going out like PR. And that created a 3-month speaking business a year for us for the last 25 years, coming off $2 pirated books. So there are ways of dealing with it. So publishers generally, if you go to a publisher, they're a bit reticent to want to put a sales page in. If they do, they want to put it in the back. But you have it in your contract, you go right in the front. So when somebody opens it, it's the first thing they see. Because when it gets stolen, which it will, the first page everybody sees in every language is your sales page.
I love that. My sales page is in the back of the book, so I'm going to follow you.
So
it works. It works a treat.
What you've got to do, Lisa, is just keep on producing more and more material, and more material. And, constantly researching, constantly learning, constantly iterating. And, I write for 3 magazines. Every month I do 2 or 3 webinars a week. I'm constantly researching and very, very active online, especially on Facebook. Yeah. And so the more I'm engaged, and also I work as entrepreneur in residence for a local university, California Lutheran University, and I've done that for Pepperdine University and others. So I'm immersed in constantly exploring more.
You hit the nail on the head, if so to speak. Is that I think a lot of speakers, or business owners who are first starting out in the industry, in the business of speaking, don't leverage social media properly, or they don't have a proper sales funnel, or they're not understanding that they have to continually create. Yes, you were yesterday's sensation, but you're yesterday's sensation. So you got to continually keep bringing more and more to the table. And
notice, pardon me for interrupting, but notice this. Both Allan and I have been doing this over 40 years. Yeah. More than 40 years. And when we started out, we were, going through phone books looking for someone to call out of the blue and say, hey, do you ever hire speakers? No.
We were calling each other.
And so we were doing everything we could do, sending out direct mail to people that never would be a prospect, wasting tons of money, doing anything we could think of to generate business, and sitting at the feet of the giants that we were admiring. Like Earl Nightingale, I listened to his audios for years, and it changed my whole worldview. And we've now been doing it for 40 plus years. We've written all these books. We've delivered thousands of speeches around the world. We've checked off all the things that speakers put on their list, like receiving awards and things like that. But neither of us are even slightly slowing down. We're just doing more of what we love. In addition to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other than playing in the band, Jim.
Other than playing in the band, yes. And so you have a new book coming out, Jim and Allan. So Allan, you've got the new book called The Answer. It's coming out.
Out, isn't it?
Yes.
Or is it out already?
It's out we've spent most of this year in blocks of 3 months at a time, traveling Europe and India, releasing it and doing the PR. It's not available in America yet. You can get it as an ebook or a hard book online on our website, but it'll be in the States maybe the next couple of weeks or months. But we particularly target our key markets. Our key markets for us are Russia, Germany, Japan, Brazil. We always hit number one on those places because of the fan base. And our toughest audience is Australian. Our English-speaking audiences in Australia, it's tough because preaching in your own parish is very difficult to carry out. America is a tough market because there's so many great speakers and writers over there, and it's such a huge market. And the UK is similar. So we tended, because of that reason, to focus on foreign languages. So I've been 55 languages in 165 countries. But the English-speaking countries are the more difficult ones for us. So we are chasing the markets that are the biggest, such as Japan, as I said, with the answers hit #1 this week.
And also, Jim, you've got a new book that you're working on right now, and you're looking for contributors for that book. From my
as a matter of fact, I've partnered with the celebrity branding agency, celebritybrandingagency.com, to do a book called Difference Makers, about people and ideas that make a difference in the world or in someone's life. And it's a book where I'm seeking co-authors. I want to have as many as 25 or 30 co-authors, each of whom pays to have a chapter in the book, but their payment guarantees them that not only do they have a chapter in the book with their contact information and all that, but that they get a stack of 25 hardcovers of it. They are featured in a big promotion that goes out in advance, during, and upon publishing. And then there's a big event. It's guaranteed to hit one of the Amazon bestseller lists because the publishers figured out how to do that. And so there's a big event that celebrates all of the authors in it achieving bestseller status. And that'll be September of 2018. So right now I'm looking for people who are interested in being part of a book that is guaranteed to hit an Amazon bestseller list called Difference Makers. And go to Cathcart.com, mylastname.com/co-author. And there's a whole page with video and everything about it.
And for the viewers that are looking right now, we have a couple ebooks. So Paul, if you can bring up that image, if you wouldn't mind, of the ebooks, the landing page.
Absolutely.
Thank you, so that everybody can see.
A couple of free ebooks, I might add. Yeah.
Guitar on your wall back there, Jim. I like it.
That's not it, no.
Love that guitar.
That's it there, yeah. So there's 3 free ebooks. So one from Jim and one from Allan and one from me. All about the speaking. So mine's about the speaking industry and who are your followers really, and how do you leverage your followers to grow your speaking career. As well as we've got from Allan, we've got an excerpt from the answer. So it's not in the US yet other than the ebook. So it's a great way to get a taste in the food of Allan. And then of course we've got from Jim, how do you connect with your customer? So again, that's on the extra credit page. And Allan is, I believe, looking for his book. If you can just go back to the 3 of us again, Paul, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, you see his book. His book is like this book.
Like this book, Jim.
I'm going to get you to play it too.
We could have done a double act here, mate.
Well, you don't want me to sing. I'll tell you that right now.
This is what old guys do when they're not speaking.
So you're both avid, obviously, guitar players. I mean, I knew that about Jim, but Allan, I did not know that about you.
Oh, Allan not only is a guitar player, Allan owns a major recording studio, Heliport Studios. And the top acts in the world fly in to go to his studio and record there.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's great.
He really is a big deal.
You're not only a professional speaker, but do you have a band, or because you've got the recording studio that monopolies the majority of your time?
Well, yeah, I do have a band. I decided when I hit 65 I'd become the lead guitar player and piano player in a rock band, which I now do here in Australia. And I've been following Jim's lead for years. Jim's been doing this a long time. And Jim did it from standing start, which was just an amazing thing. And it showed the power of setting goals and deciding what you want and going forward. I'm doing exactly the same thing. Just mine got a bit out of control. Now I have these massive studios here, which is good fun. It's like a boat. You know, you can spend as much money as you want, but they say if you throw the money in the toilet, it's better because you go down to the beach, you might get some back.
And I have a band that's basically me and my wife, and occasional lead guitarist joins us, but we're called Resume the Boom. The baby boom, the economic boom, resume the boom.
We're getting close to the end because we have a 45-minute time and we've got about 6 minutes left. There's a couple questions that have come from our viewers that I wanted to ask. So one of them is, if for you, Allan, what is the number one body language that you find that people overlook? whether it be on stage or in the boardroom or in a meeting?
Well, I think the single biggest mistake that the speakers, whether they're speaking to a meeting or they're professional speakers or trainers, make is where they're crossing their body somehow. And you get things like lacing their fingers together or holding hands with themselves, or even you'll see some speakers who are not very experienced crossing their arms. And holding hands, covering your mouth. Now, holding hands with yourself is probably one of the most common. And it goes back to when you're a kid, if your mother or father or somebody held your hand when you're in tense situations like a new school or a big shopping mall, if they held your hand for security and suddenly you're in front of a group of people almost naked, you hold your own hand. It gives yourself solace. So avoiding any sort of crossing is the biggest mistake. And if you, this shatters a lot of people. They say, well, what do I do now? All my life I've been crossing. Here's a guy saying I can't do this. Well, just replace it with what we call a steeple. It looks a bit like, kind of like praying. And I'll just screen it. Just goes like this. And as you're talking, when your hands come back together, just practice this. And you'll see a lot of politicians like Angela Merkel and Clinton, a lot of them will do this because when you do it, you look like you know what you're talking about. And importantly, when you hold this for 2 minutes, you feel like you know what you're talking about, even if you don't. But in other words, it calms your emotions and it makes the audience feel better about you and avoids any sort of crossing or folding. So the biggest and by doing a steeple for starters, you'll start to train yourself out of doing any negatives.
And Jim, do you have any last-minute tips for speakers out there on how to effectively make an impact with the audience on stage or in the boardroom?
Remember, above all, that it's not the speech that matters. It's not the speaker that matters. It's not even the audience that matters. What matters is what the audience can do with the message you're bringing them.
Yeah.
So before every speech, I say a little prayer, and I just say, Lord, help me be valuable to them. And so I look at my message and I think, how can I make this more meaningful to them? Because my opening 15 to 30 seconds is more important to me for my own confidence and power on stage than the next 30 minutes of content, because it's what clarifies why they should bother listening to me. Years ago, I was in Los Angeles, booked as a 30-year-old speaker, 30-something, rosy cheeks, looked years younger than I was, and I was speaking to doctors who were chiefs of staff of hospitals, doctors in charge of doctors. Oh my God. I was so intimidated, and I was speaking about leadership, and I was in the audience waiting my turn, and all the other doctors had done this.
That
and they
means
read their papers.
Doesn't it, Allan? When you put
They
your glasses
read
on.
their papers to the audience. And of course, the audience went to sleep. Well, when it was my turn, and I really did know what I was talking about from experience, I walked to the front of the room. I took the microphone off of the little gooseneck stand, and I stepped around in front of the lectern, and everybody backed up. And I said, I'd like you to go back in your minds to medical school, to one of the classes you had on leadership and dealing with people. How many of you had a class on leadership and dealing with people? And I held up my hand. None of them held up their hands. I said, please look around the room. And they did. I said, do you realize what this means? It means I'm the expert and you should take notes. And that's exactly what happened. They started laughing and then they started applauding. They said, good point, kid. All right, what do you got? And they booked me again for the following month in Washington, D.C.
Wow. So if you two were to give yourselves a word of advice to your younger self, what would that be?
I'd say follow Allan's lead more often.
Thanks, Jim. Well, I'd say don't wait to be discovered. Everybody's waiting for the phone call to ring for something to happen. You've got to get out there and you've got to sell yourself. You don't wait to be discovered.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's grit and grind all day long, right? Like if you don't...
And don't expect speakers bureaus to do it, and don't expect some staff salesperson you hire to do it. First, you've got to be your own best representative. Then you can teach others. And
I would say too, one of the things that really is starting out in the speaking industry, or even when you are a successful speaker and a long-time speaker, it's always running those sales funnels, always monetizing everything from the top of the sales funnel all the way down, making sure you've got monetization all the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Paul, before we close the show, is there any one last questions by our viewers that we could ask before we've got a couple minutes left?
Yes, we had one sent in. It is, public speaking is so competitive. What do you think I can do to stand out?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that. Paul, could you repeat that again?
Certainly. Public speaking is so competitive. What can I do to stand out?
I thought you were going to do a musical interlude there, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay, Allan, what would you say that they could do to stand out?
What would I say? What, Lisa?
To be able to stand out among speakers.
Yeah, to stand out, become competitive. Somebody's asked, what would be the number one thing you could do to stand out from the rest of all the other speakers?
Well, now the golden rule's always been you've either got to be first with a subject or an idea, something that is new, that's cutting edge, that really rivets people into place, and which is what I've done. I've done that with the answer. Or you've got to be the best. That is, you can take it, you can exist, like sales, marketing, communication skills, the basic staple of speakers overall. If you're the best at that, then you'll always get the work. And I strive to be both, to be cutting edge, to be first, and to be the best at both.
I would say when you start out, recognize that you're a commodity at first. You know, that unless you've got some unique talent, like you're the world's gold medal gymnast or something, if you don't have a unique factor like that, then you're going to be a commodity. You are a person there to deliver a particular message or achieve a particular result. And if you will be the best at serving your customer, the best at making sure that it works for them, then you can earn your skills and earn your position in the marketplace as you grow. Because I started out selling Earl Nightingale's motivational recordings. And then I started doing training programs that other people had designed. And then I started creating my own. Then I bought a psychological research firm and did some original research and wrote the book, The Acorn Principle, and among others. And now then I've got market distinction. But at first, I was not the best. I was not the first, and I was certainly not unique.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, the other thing is you're right. Maybe you won't be the first or the best or the unique, but it's always like Allan said, just keep going, plug away at it. Eventually you'll get there.
Yes, keep selling.
Don't worry about the competition. There will never be a point where the need goes away.
Yeah.
There'll always be fewer of us than there is the need for us.
And leveraging other people, right? Like other brands, and aligning yourself with other brands and helping each other and supporting and getting profitable business relationships, right?
Extra credits. I mean, that's
extra credits is a
perfect example of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Well,
I think that book that Jim's doing there, he's got other authors coming on board. That is a brilliant, simple, and fast and effective way for anybody to become a best-selling author, but they don't have to do a great contribution or be a great publisher. All you've got to do is commit to writing it by a deadline and make sure it's good material. And when you think of a good colleague of Jim and ours, Jim and mine, Mark Victor Hansen. Mark told us about this back in the 70s. Remember this? We got this book called Chicken Soup for the Soul. I still remember saying to Mark, who's ever going to buy a book called that? Yeah, what the? And of course, it's over 100 million copies. And that's I don't think Mark ever wrote a line in it, but he got all the authors to write it. And it's a great way of doing it, getting itself out there in the market as a specialist and a best-selling author. Yeah.
Well, Jim, I'll be looking forward to going to your page and have a little boo at what that is about co-authoring.
Good. Cathcart.com/co-author.
I will do that. All right. Well, it was a pleasure, Allan, to meet you and to be delightfully for the last 45 minutes with a cup of coffee with you guys. Thank you very much, both of you. And it will be on YouTube very soon.
Outstanding. Great to see you both.
Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, Mark,
for joining us. Lisa, thanks so much. And thank you, Paul.
My pleasure.